Do, 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 la da da da. News broadcast talking about big balls. Teaser trailers. Teaser trailers. Oh, walking in the desert. Now the video actually starts.
Hi all, Unready here, and today I've got something a little different for you all. So, recently the Australian YouTuber BoyBoy put out a video where he and his friends from the channels Friendly Geordies and I Did a Thing supposedly sneak into the CIA satellite uplink station at Pine Gap in the middle of the Australian outback. This is a bad one. It's honestly one of the worst YouTube videos I have watched in terms of the information being presented. So I thought the best way to get that across would be to have two of me review it. So for this video, we will have Past Unready reacting live to the video, giving his insightful and sarcastic commentary. And whenever he needs more context, we will cut back to me, editing Unready, to provide some research where it is required. So without further ado, let's get into it. Take it away, me.
Far the scariest video we've ever made. We teamed up with Friendly Geordies to sneak into Pine Gap, which is one of the CIA's most important spy bases. But before we get into that, the most obvious question is, what is this giant American base doing on the other side of the world in the middle of Australia? Well, first off,
Before he gets into that, I'll just explain it to you. You know, the Australian government essentially lent it to the Americans as a quid pro quo for some other diplomatic type stuff, as they often do. It's how nations do things on a global stage. I'm just telling you that now because BoyBoy doesn't actually mention it in the video, despite this little preamble of him supposedly telling us how this happened. Just an aside.
it shouldn't be controversial to say the CIA wants to control the world, right? Like, surely there's no one out there who thinks they're not doing that. They've got the most...
I mean, I have to stop again, and it's barely a minute in. No, actually, I don't think they're trying to control the world. Are they trying to get information and manipulate things to America's interests? Definitely, certainly. That's what any good intelligence agency is attempting to do. But, like, rule the planet? Like, just phrasing it in that way makes it sound like they're James Bond villains or something. It's like, okay, mate, calm down.
most advanced satellites in the world, and they're sucking up everyone's information, which, you know, good on you, but they've got a big problem, right? And I'll explain it to you over there. All right, so let's pretend this...
Yeah, just gonna mute this bit. So what he says here is mostly correct. He's spraying the globe, a little bit of slapstick humour, spraying the globe to represent the satellite coverage across the Earth, and that's mostly true. Pine Gap's not actually unique in being a satellite receiver station. There's at least 8 of them in the South Pacific area alone, with many more being present across the Northern Hemisphere as well. New Zealand even has one. It's down in Blenheim, of all places. So it's not a particularly unusual thing. And
again, BoyBoy doesn't mention any of this. Oh, and then the Laurel and Hardy stuff starts. Here we go. The globe starts spinning faster. He's talking about his ball. It's spinning. The ball is spinning. He keeps going. Oh, and now we're at Edward Snowden, and I might actually unmute this.
Ones like Christopher Boyce, we have access to all these leaked documents exposing the inner workings of Pine Gap. Now get this. The base is codenamed Rainfall, and it's part of a top secret international spy infrastructure called Five Eyes. These CIA guys are literally out here laughing as Bond villains. It's so embarrassing to read.
Is it though? I mean, Five Eyes makes sense as a name. It's got 5 big nations all spying together, you know. Kind of makes sense. Eyes looking, spying. Doesn't sound that cringy to me. Brainfall, I guess, could be referring to like the fall of satellite data information, or maybe it's just a phonetic alphabet thing. I don't know. But it's not that bad. I've heard worse names. Ugh, just a minor nitpick, but there's just so many of these throughout the video, I have to get them. He tries to make a joke, but it's just infantile and stupid. Ugh. Anyway, carrying on.
But thanks to these documents, we know all about Pine Gap. We know about their capabilities and how important they are to the US, but you don't really need to read these. Like, I mean, unless you're a YouTuber and you want to look smart, like, these leaks are redundant.
Yeah, that's interesting. The leaked documents about the capability of the station that this whole video is about don't matter. We shouldn't talk about them at all. Isn't that weird? This is the sort of caliber of information that BoyBoy is going to present throughout this video, so just strap in, everyone.
See, the American government is so proud of its surveillance of the whole world that their CIA agents just brag about it at every opportunity anyway.
The Pine Gap satellites are the most sophisticated pieces of military hardware ever created by the United States government. They are very, very effective at intercepting signals, and the person on the other side, of course, can hear that person as clearly as you can hear me speaking in front of you today. So who's using that communication signal? Is it Saddam Hussein talking to his generals, or is it mom and dad talking to their kids?
Now, you may think it's weird that a CIA agent is admitting to a room full of people that he actively spies on their conversations with their kids.
I mean, not really, because he didn't just do that. He was talking about something else clearly, but you cut it in a way to make it look like he was saying that. And I haven't been able to find the full video of this because BoyBoy doesn't actually provide a source for it. Anyway, unmute.
Two hands up.
Now, just to be clear for all the nerds out there, this guy right here is technically an NSA agent, not a CIA agent. But for the rest of this video, when I say CIA, I mean CIA, DIA, NSA, NRO, and every other US intelligence institution. I feel like I'm in the laundry aisle whenever I talk about the US government's monstrous global surveillance apparatus. For the rest of this video, Ultra Oxy, Free and Gentle, Original, Downey, it's all the CIA. We're talking about US spy bases here. But Pine Gap wasn't always this hub for global surveillance. For 75,000 years, this place was the home of Indigenous Australians, who are planet Earth's oldest human civilization. And then white people showed up. They kind of came out of nowhere 200 years ago and genocided the original Australians, which conveniently made the outback a lot more spacious and offered some much needed privacy for civilized games of croquet or maybe a massive secret CIA base. So, with the traditional owners of the land out of the way, everything was going well for the CIA in Australia, until the 60s.
Now, okay, again, this is a minor nitpick. Like, the way that he just phrased that, it makes it sound as if it was like the CIA who got rid of the native indigenous people on the land, when it was, the Australians, like BoyBoy, that really did it. So I know it's like a very minor nitpick, but it's just the way that he talks about this, the sort of tone that he puts it on, just, I don't know, just makes it sound like he's accusing them of getting rid of the indigenous people of the land, which is just, I mean, look, the Americans have done enough of that in their own country. At least blame them for something they really did.
Spy on you and control the world. And in Australia, this meant there were constant protests and waves of people trying to break into this giant American spy base in the middle of the outback.
By constant, he means 3 big waves of protesters across like 50 years. So yeah, constant, definitely constant.
But let's be real, no one cares what thousands of hippies have to say. Like the real issue for the CIA came in the 70s when we elected a new leader, a guy called Gough Whitlam. Now he was super unique, firstly because his name's Gough. Like, what the fuck is that? I've never met a guy called Gough. You've definitely never met a guy called Gough. Wikipedia doesn't show any other mentions of another person with the first name Gough. It's just a crazy, made-up name that'll never, ever exist ever again. But the other thing that made him unique is that he wanted an independent Australia that wasn't going to be bullied by foreign superpowers. He pulled Australian troops out of Vietnam, and the Americans were like...
Editing me is going to have to cut in here to provide some more context, just because... this is just everything he says in this entire section is completely wrong.
Oh boy, this will be a long one. Hi there, me again. Yeah, so BoyBoy is just lying here about what occurred with the Whitlam dismissal in 1975. Firstly, a minor correction. He jokes about no one else in history having the first name Gough. Well, he's actually correct here, as I can't find any records of a person with the first name Gough. This includes Prime Minister Whitlam himself, though, as Gough wasn't Whitlam's first name, rather it was Edward. He did go by Gough, but it wasn't his first name. So already we can see how trustworthy and knowledgeable BoyBoy is on this issue, as he doesn't even know the fucking first name of one of the main people involved. So moving on to the actual facts of the situation. The 1975 Australian constitutional crisis, more commonly known as the Whitlam Affair, was an extremely turbulent time in Australian political history. To sum it up, the Governor-General of Australia, Sir John Kerr, dismissed Whitlam as Prime Minister, appointing the then opposition leader as his replacement until new elections could be called. This occurred due to the blocking of supply by the opposition in the Australian Senate. The supply, in this case, was the supply of money that the government would use to pay itself in order to function. The opposition did this as they were annoyed at several of the Whitlam government's plans and controversies. These included an attempt by Whitlam to gain loans for development projects not through traditional means but via back channels and dodgy dealings. So to avoid a government shutdown because of this, Kerr removed Whitlam, as his constitutional powers allowed him to do that in his role as the Governor-General. People like BoyBoy claim that Kerr removed Whitlam at the behest of the CIA, as they were paying him or blackmailing him to do so, depending on which person you listen to. That's a broad summary at any rate. The whole affair is one of the most complicated incidents in the whole of Australian politics, and will take a video far longer than this one and a degree in Australian constitutional law to even begin to explore at any level of depth. Whilst I'm not enough of an expert on the event to even begin to make such a video, the event has had much scrutiny over the years. Modern historians have thoroughly examined the Whitlam affair and have also found no evidence of CIA involvement. Historian Peter Edwards, for example, concluded in 2015 that, so we can end 2015 with even more confidence that the dismissal of the Whitlam government was instigated by Kerr himself with no involvement by the CIA. Whitlam himself even noted in his private writings that Kerr, as fascinated as he long had been with intelligence matters, did not need any encouragement from the CIA to remove him. As an interesting aside, I found this little tidbit while researching this section, and Whitlam actually used Pine Gaps to spy on people himself. In 1973, Whitlam used the station to spy on Japanese diplomats during trade negotiations. This was reported in a deathbed confession by Justice Robert Hope, who headed up the Royal Commission on Intelligence, a commission that the Whitlam government ordered. That's awkward. During this time, Whitlam is also reported to have noted how important the American alliance was to Australia. So maybe his based anti-American stance that BoyBoy praises was actually a cheeky political maneuver to distract from his government's failings, rather than a solid conviction. Just interesting to note. Overall, the whole affair is so complicated that I could spend multiple videos covering it and detailing all the nuances, but frankly to disprove BoyBoy's theory I don't even need to do that. So let's look at this theory as BoyBoy presents it in more detail here.
But the other thing that made him unique is that he wanted an independent Australia that wasn't going to be bullied by foreign superpowers. He pulled Australian troops out of Vietnam, and the Americans were like, "What the fuck are you doing, Goff? I thought we had something special. Remember that time we got all those children and burnt them alive? Well, you're turning your back on all these fun times we had." And like a classic toxic boyfriend, the CIA started bugging Australian Parliament and surveilling Goff's party. And when Goff found out, he responded by threatening to close Pine Gap. And this was a step too far for the Americans. The CIA saw Goff as a serious threat, so they simply orchestrated a coup to get rid of the democratically elected leader of Australia. He was replaced with a more subservient Prime Minister who immediately renewed Pine Gap's contract, and no leader ever since has dared to question all the secret CIA bases spread across our country. Now, we all know about the Americans and their little hobby of getting rid of democratically elected leaders in enemy countries in the third world, but it turns out they do this to their friends too. We accepted that our island was just a giant US military base and no form of democracy would ever get in the way of that.
Now first off, it is interesting that BoyBoy's account doesn't mention any of the complexities of the event and instead paints it as being a very simple, cut and dry case of us Americans removing a foreign leader. Now what's interesting to note is that the pullout from Vietnam had already happened in 1972. With the last units being pulled out in 1973 according to the Australian War Memorial. However, Australia did not stop supporting Vietnam during this time. They continued to send humanitarian and military aid to the nation right up until 1975 when South Vietnam fell. So why would the Americans be angry at them for this? They didn't even fully pull out, they kept up their end of the bargain. So if the Americans wanted to stop Whitlam from removing more Aussie support from Vietnam, they failed spectacularly. Additionally, starting in 1969 under Nixon, America had begun the process of Vietnamization in Vietnam. Basically, this involved training up regular South Vietnamese army troops and supplying them with weapons so that they could carry on the fight against North Vietnam. At the same time, US troops would gradually be pulled out in greater and greater numbers, with the South Vietnamese picking up the slack. So even the US was pulling out of Vietnam by this point. So why would they be so angry at Australia for doing the exact same thing? Additionally, BoyBoy makes a huge point of Whitlam threatening to cancel US bases in Australia, and this is correct. Actually, it's one of the few times he says anything remotely correct in this whole video. But what he doesn't mention is that Nixon was also looking to re-examine US-Australian relations at this time, as is noted by many historians such as aforementioned Peter Edwards. So it is clear that he was also thinking along similar lines to Whitlam. Now, after Watergate, this changed somewhat, with President Gerald Ford making steps in the other direction. But still, if the US was thinking along similar lines to Whitlam at the time he was removed, then why would they get rid of him? It sounds like they are thinking along similar lines. Would it not make more sense to keep him around? Overall, BoyBoy's narrative on the affair is far too simple and makes no sense when put in under any scrutiny. Also, his sources are a little off. Who were those sources again? One of the main proponents of the CIA theory is Victor Marchetti, who is a former CIA agent who actually worked at the Pine Gap facility for a little bit in the 1960s. After his service, he would spend later years of his life writing for groups such as the Institute for Historical Review, which is a group which specializes in writing and creating material around denying the Holocaust. So yeah, a real trustworthy guy there. Another person who pushes this narrative is William Bloom, a prominent critic of America whose stated life goal in his own words is the, if not ending, at least slowing down the American empire, at least injuring the beast. It's causing so much suffering around the world. So yeah, another totally reliable and definitely not extremely biased source. Overall, on the one side we have the general consensus of most modern historians. On the other hand, we have crackpots, anti-Semites, and BoyBoy. Yeah, I think I know which side I'll be going with. Anyways, back to me.
Top secret American bases are literally everywhere. Like this fucking thing. What the fuck is this? It's even more secretive than Pine Gap. They're the tallest man-made structures in the southern hemisphere, but we have no idea what they're doing. All we know is that every now and then when a passenger plane flies near it, it mysteriously malfunctions and suddenly plunges to the ground.
Oh my god. Holy shit. Okay, editing unready. You're gonna have to give us some context.
Hi there, editing unready here. BoyBoy apparently doesn't know what a radio tower is. Like, seriously, that big tower there is a radio mast. It sends and receives radio signals. This isn't a difficult concept to understand, unless you're BoyBoy, apparently. So just to give some more info on the facility BoyBoy is talking about, this is the Harold E. Holt Naval Base. For most of the 20th century, it was a joint US-Australian base, with the US being in charge of the actual base itself. This was until 1999, when the base was officially handed over to the Australian government. There is an American presence that remains there, but the Australians are now fully in charge of the facility. This means that, according to BoyBoy, the Australian government is fucking with its own planes, apparently. As if any interference from the radio masts was occurring, it would be from the Aussie government messing around. So the plane accidents that BoyBoy is referring to here are Qantas flights QF72 and QF71. Both of these planes malfunction whilst flying over Western Australia near to where the Harold Holt Naval Base is located in 2008 and 2009 respectively. Both planes were forced to make emergency landings after the planes suddenly had issues with their pitch, which resulted in their noses briefly being pointed straight down, which, as you can imagine, has some issues associated with it. Now, some people like BoyBoy speculated that this was due to interference from the naval base, and many sensationalist headlines like this one, BoyBoy links in his description, were run in the aftermath of both events. The other sources BoyBoy includes are less helpful to his case, to say the least. One of them is an account from the pilot who flew QF72 and the emotional aftermath of the story for him. Around 118 of the 315 passengers of QF72 were injured in the event, and as he was the pilot, he felt responsible for this and was pretty upset over the whole thing, to be honest. So whilst this article is an emotional read for sure, it doesn't actually provide any good information on what caused the accident. The next source BoyBoy provides is an article detailing the QF72 accident, in which it is noted that investigators found that a computer code fault was likely the cause of the accident. Looking into this further, I read that the Australian Transportation Safety Bureau's report on both accidents. It's 313 pages long, and boy, they do not mess around. In this report, the ATSB concluded that interference from external sources, such as the naval base, was extremely unlikely based on the evidence available. So yeah, BoyBoy is just lying on this, and even his own sources prove it. Gee, maybe if you're wrong on something, you should change your opinion and not double down and just hope that no one notices. Well, I noticed, BoyBoy. I noticed you being a filthy liar. Anyways, let's get back to it.
Now look, all of you know that we're obviously very patriotic, true blue Australians. And unlike this weak and cowardly and pathetic International Parts Association who choose to just ignore the problem, we think we deserve to know what's going on in our own country, right? So, obviously we don't have any experience sneaking into a CIA base, let alone the most important one. So we decided to speak to a lovely lady called Donna, a member of a group called Christians Against All Terrorism, who somehow managed to sneak into the base back in 2006.
So how did you actually get into finding out?
Well, we weren't great. We're not sleuths. We've never broken into anything before. We kind of didn't know what to do. So one of our crew went to Bunnings and bought bolt cutters. It was all on camera and everything, and later came out in court. The Bunnings guy testified that Brian went and bought these bolt cutters.
Waterboarding some poor Bunnings employee to get this information out of him. Now, Donna explained to us that one a brutal top secret CIA base in the middle of Australia is by technically calling it a US-Australian joint defence facility. So while it's run entirely by the CIA, apparently Australians are meant to have some kind of symbolic role in it as well.
I mean, their role in it is that the Australian government gets the benefits of having the information that the station disseminates down. So again, the 3 satellite receiver stations around the world, they coordinate data between the various Five Eyes nations. And Australia, by being part of that, gets a bit of a benefit. So yeah, actually, BoyBoy, there is a bit of a benefit, and it doesn't have to be staffed entirely by Australians for them to do that. Shocking, I know.
Are there any Australian staff working at Pine Gap?
Yeah, there are. Cleaners, catering.
How does she know this? I'm asking seriously because I've looked and I can find no records on who is actually staffing Pine Gap, aside from just I guess, this video later on, which we'll get to. So she's talking out of her ass here, I guess. Fantastic.
I don't think they're in charge.
Now, Donna obviously couldn't just drive through the front gate, so they set out on a 6-hour trek in the middle of the night over desert mountains to get in this way. But the weirdest part is that they told the Defence Minister the exact night they were planning to sneak in. They said that they were Aussie citizens who were concerned about war crimes and they wanted to do a citizen's inspection of this foreign facility on Australian soil. But for some reason, no one took them seriously.
We fell over, we hit fences, we bumped into trees, walking in the dark. There were cows who started mooing at us, shh, 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 And I thought, oh, this is just ridiculous, this is pretty crazy. And then I saw lights. And it really strikes you. Then I walked closer and I could see the base and I could see little people walking around. And I thought, far out. I won't swear. Far out. I'm not crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy. I am right to be here. It's fucking 3 o'clock in the morning.
So much for not swearing. But, just to clarify, those big dome thingies that she's all they're just covers for radar dishes, because radar dishes have to spin and they have a lot of moving parts. So it's good to have a cover over the top of those so that stuff like weather and the elements don't get at it, and also so that anyone nearby doesn't get whacked in the head with a big radar turbine walking past. So I know it looks like some UFO type stuff is going on, but it really isn't. If you just looked up any of what is actually happening there and how it works, it really wouldn't be that shocking. But apparently this lady didn't do that. So yeah, this is the level of analysis we're working with this video.
There's people walking around this American spy base in the middle of the desert. What are they doing at 3 or 4 in the morning? And then we heard
probably listening to satellite data, probably being on guard, changing shifts. I mean, I imagine, that the satellite data comes in at all times of the day. You got to have guards on the outside. You got to have people inside listening. They take it in shifts. Makes sense. Really don't see why that would be that shocking.
with this. Drop the bolt cutters. On both sides, there was AFP with guns. Get on the ground, get on the ground. I was like, you know what, I've been walking for 6 hours. I said, if I get on the ground, I am not getting up again. I said, I am so sore. She came behind me and kind of got the back of my head and pushed me to my knees. And I said, okay, all right, I can be on my knees. And then she got her boot and put it into my back, and I was like, oh my God.
I mean, okay, like, so what did you expect? You expected to just walk up to a frickin' basically a military base in the middle of the night, try and cut the fence, and you expect them to be like the picture of hospitality? What did you expect did you expect them to have a frickin' warm meal ready for you? What the hell did you expect, lady? Jesus.
On the ground like this. And I said, you don't have to, put your boot in. You don't have to yell at me. I said, you're the ones with the guns.
Now, she may have had secret police.
But until they searched you, they didn't know that you weren't armed. Because again, you're sneaking into a military base. And there's only two kinds of people that do that. Like foreign spies, terrorists, and, well, that's three actually. I can't count. Foreign spies, terrorists, and crazy people.
Standing on her neck, which, doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but I'm actually incredibly jealous that she's one of the only Australians to have ever seen the Pine Gap balls with their own eyes.
This is one of my photos.
Oh, you got the balls. My dream is to see the balls.
Yeah.
He's so obsessed with balls because he doesn't have any.
Woman risked potential life imprisonment just to protest this face. Well, it turns out the story of Pine Gap is much more personal for Donna. She's been there on the ground when Pine Gap's missiles hit their targets. Now, some say the US directly killed about 1 million people in the war on terror. Others say the figure's closer to 5 million. We don't know the exact figure, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? Like the joke is no one actually cares when an Arab on the other side of the world dies. But Donna and her friends discovered a little war crime hack to make people pay attention. You see, if white people travel to the Middle East and go to these civilian areas in Iraq and just hang out there, it makes it much, much harder for Western governments to bomb that exact location. This was called the Human Shield Program, and it was super effective.
Okay, just gonna have to cut over to editing unready here because this is totally wrong.
Thank you, me. So, yet again, this stuff that BoyBoy and this lady Donna Mulhern are saying is a little iffy to say the least. It is true that around 500 people went to Iraq in 2003, intending to put themselves in key facilities in order to discourage the US from bombing them if they decided to invade. According to a Vice article, most of the shields were actually ordered to leave Iraq by the Iraqi government. Around 80 or so, including Donna Mulhern, stayed. Apparently she was stationed in a food warehouse, which doesn't sound much like a marketplace as she claimed. But aside from that, I can't find any information on what actually happened during her trip. Apparently she wasn't bombed in the opening of the US invasion, so I'm not sure what her story about a blown up marketplace was about, as there is no mention of such an attack happening that I can find. So overall, the claim that the Human Shields program was extremely effective, as BoyBoy suggests, is just wrong. Most of the shields left Iraq before the invasion started, and with the ones who remained, there is little evidence to back up how effective they were or not, with most of what we do know about them being based on the word of the individuals themselves, who I have a little bit of trouble trusting to be unbiased. Anyways, back to me again.
Pine Gap guiding missiles into Iraqi weddings may sound like old news, but don't worry, Pine Gap's still as busy as ever. Right now, while Israel is on a rampant campaign to flatten Gaza so they can have more room to film their thirst traps, Pine Gap is in charge of providing targeting and analysis for...
Muting again, so same thing but slightly different.
Okay, so I'm going to take over here. Other me got a little angry while he was reviewing this bit, and his point wasn't very clear. So I'll restate it a little more clearly here. So to be 100% clear about this, the Pine Gap facility, as the NSA agent earlier so helpfully pointed out, is a signal intelligence facility. They intercept signals and provide data. They do not actively guide missiles onto their targets. And so what if they did? If there is a war crime that's being carried out by bombing civilians, under international law, the people to blame for that war crime are the people who carried it out, aka fired the missile, and the people who ordered the strike, not the people who essentially provided a map of where certain people were. Just intercepting some signals and tracking their locations, or reporting on the contents of those signals, is not a war crime. So everything Donna Mulhern and BoyBoy say about war crimes here is just totally incorrect.
Here we go. Here's their lawyer talking about stuff. I mean, they're talking about terrorism law. And, like, look, I admit that a lot of post 9/11 terrorism laws went way fucking overboard, but frankly, if there's one place where military law should apply and there should be harsh penalties for trespassing, it should be a military base. You don't want people just fucking rocking up to military bases and, like, messing around with the place. It should be something that should be deterred for people's safety and also for the safety of a country's interests. It's really not that absurd. So them acting like, oh my god, this is so scary, they're going to kill us on sight. It's like, no, they're not. They could if you guys be dicks enough, but if you act like, well, like they do later in this video, it shouldn't be a problem.
Donna went in, this place has become much more dangerous for civilians.
No one has filmed inside the premises, like even the perimeter sort of premise of the premises, for a good 20 years. And when you think of where have you seen?
I mean, that's like, okay, like Donna and that went in 2008, so what, 4 years to 2020, 10 years back to 2010, so 14 minus 2, 16, so he's not quite right on the 20, almost 20, but like even so, it's like, okay, like, why would they? What is there to film? Some fucking radar dishes going round and round? Ah yes, come in and film all our top secret information. Like, why is that? Why is this a point of discussion in the video?
Such footage.
Never.
Right, it's pretty hard to find it. This is a very secretive base now, particularly with the Americans there.
I mean, not really. Everybody knows that the base exists there. We don't know exactly what info is being passed down, but we know what the base is. We know roughly what it does. We know probably some of the technical specs of what it does from the leaked documents. This really isn't that big of a deal. You go, oh my god, it's so top secret, so they can LARP as fucking spies or whatever. Jesus Christ.
Yet there's been almost no coverage of it, has there? Does anyone even try to cover it? Does it even exist anymore?
Is this lawyer like high or something?
You know, at the centre of
I think he's like
now,
had a few beers or something before doing this call.
Comment. It's extraordinary, really.
He sounds cooked.
Why are they so coy about it?
You've gone there, you don't even fucking know. Are you kidding me? What are you clowns up to? What are you doing?
We're just trying to play soccer.
Yeah, we just want to play soccer in the desert.
Are they all high? Actually, that would explain a lot.
To intercept,
This whole video, actually.
Electronic communications, phone calls.
So like this phone call right now.
Yeah.
We've got to cut him some slack here because, you know, we did put him in a tough position at the last minute, but at the same time, I don't feel like he was the most sensible person to go to for advice.
Yeah. Coming in, I think there's no option but to fucking fang the gate. Once that gate opens, you guys got to go. You just got to go. Gunning towards the facility.
Nice.
Let's see what they'll do. It'd be just fucking hilarious. I'd love it.
Well, we've gotten legal advice, I guess, but I'm not sure if talking to Mark was the best idea. I was much more chill about this before I realised they could, you know, legally kill us if we entered.
So they can shoot us? Seems to be the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we knew that, right?
See if there's a recording.
I don't know if they could shoot me.
You didn't know that.
They're not going to shoot us.
They might.
There's no way they'll shoot us. If they didn't shoot the people who actually got into the facility, why would they shoot a
That
bunch
was
of guys
20 years ago. Who's kicking the soccer ball?
Oh yes, and Australia is like famously conflict-ridden now with hundreds of spies. So of course they're gonna just shoot anybody on sight. What are you talking about? Ironically, the thing that BoyBoy said, or Leska said, is actually one of the only correct statements that he's made in this whole goddamn video.
These like peace-loving hippie activists. But the thing is, no one's actually tried to just drive straight through the front gate pretending they work there. So we put on our suits and got ready for our first day of work at the top secret CIA base.
So, okay, this is just insane, this whole bit. Anyway, we're going to fast forward a little bit until the, this is just asinine conversation. Here we go.
But apparently it's coming up after this turnoff. The only people driving down this road are spies.
I hate this. Oh, fuck.
Just do it.
Just do it, okay? I think it's this right here.
We shouldn't be here.
No, we should.
They're going to shoot us.
Give us the sign. There's the sign.
Holy shit.
Oh, it just says no through road.
No, come on, you can see it's a through road. Look.
Yeah, this is the place.
Okay, now that was meant to be a joke, I think, but like, dude, does this guy not, I think it was Geordie who said that, does he not understand what a fucking through road is? It's like, okay, through road doesn't mean like having no through road doesn't mean that the road terminates like 10 feet from the sign and goes off the edge of a fucking cliff. What it means is that the road that you're on doesn't go to anywhere else. It has one fixed destination that you stop in. Again, this is meant to be a joke, but these guys are just so infantile and stupid. I am honestly wouldn't be surprised if they didn't know what a through road was. So, oh God, here we go.
What, that's their first deceptive
Oh,
decoy?
this is
Okay,
honestly, it
better
almost
turn
worked
back
on you idiots, so I wouldn't be fucking laughing about it.
This can't be it.
And the speed limit's 100 on a no through road.
I
What's
gotta
weird
say
about
like,
that?
not a bad first offence. Start light.
Oh my
Wait,
God.
is this the right street, Alex?
Yeah, this looks like it goes all the way to Pine Gap.
What did you click like?
You can't click Pine Gap on Google Maps. You can't.
Okay, I'm gonna let editing Unready show you this, but this is a complete lie. You can absolutely Google it, and I googled the route from Alice Springs to Pine Gap, and editing Unready will show you this on the screen right now. So, like, was this a joke? Did he like? What is he looking at on his phone? Is he having a stroke? What is going on? I don't know.
Directions.
So we made it back home, but I don't really know what's meant to happen now. Like, we've been talking to our lawyer non-stop. I'm just awake. Like, I'm laying awake at night and we're just thinking the feds are going to raid the house at any minute. It's honestly the most uneasy I've ever been in my life. And all of this for
Brave
just
activist here,
trekking through
folks.
the outback in our own country. Like, look, we get it a bit of...
This is some sovereign citizen bullshit right here. Oh, we're just trekking through in our own country. There's many places you can't go in your own country, dipshit. You can't just walk into other people's property, for example. And there's many government areas that you also can't go into. Some of it's military stuff, some of it's just stuff for infrastructure. There's a lot of reasons. So this whole like, oh, we can't walk through our own country thing, like, what is this? The Middle Ages? There's fucking like boundaries and shit. Like, what is this crap?
criticism on our channel. While the vast majority of our fans are Americans who like our videos, there's a very small group of upset American viewers who don't like what we're saying, and instead of trying to point out our mistakes, they just say that we're obsessed with America. They say we should stay out of it and focus more on our own country. But what no one understands is that this is America, right? I wish it wasn't, but it is, right? We don't have
Holy shit.
a choice. The Americans just run things here. Like, we can't
No, they fucking don't.
vote on it. Our politicians won't even talk about it.
Editing already, let's cut to something that definitely shows them talking about it a lot.
Okay, to pick up on what BoyBoy just said, and what he said also earlier in the video.
Serbian Prime Minister who immediately renewed Pine Gap's contract, and no leader ever since has dared to question all the secret CIA bases spread across our country.
Australian politicians disagree with the US and have done so many times in the past. Just last year, for example, Australian politicians called on the US to halt its extradition attempts of Julian Assange, for example. Also in 2008, Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd withdrew from a security alliance called the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or the Quad for short. So it's not true to say that Australian politicians can't disagree with the US. Whilst many Australian governments have cooperated with the US, it is clear that they have done so based on shared geopolitical interests, and not because they were essentially puppet governments. After all, Kevin Rudd went on to fill out his whole term after 2008, and didn't get murdered by CIA death squads or anything. So yeah, as usual, BoyBoy's take is bullshit. Back to me.
American politicians can talk about it, though. Their congressmen are constantly invited to visit Pine Gap, but our elected officials can't go anywhere near.
Okay, so saying that they visited there, like, okay, that doesn't mean they're constantly invited, it's just they have visited. There's a fucking difference.
Even though it's meant to be our country. It's such a bizarre and pathetic relationship, and they don't pull this kind of shit with anyone else. Like Canada and Mexico are their neighbors, right? And when America starts telling them what to do or ask them to come along and blow up some random farmers in the Middle East, they tell them to fuck off. But their little Aussie lapdogs on the complete other side of the world have always done exactly what they tell us to do. And if you turn on the news in Australia...
I mean, like, no? again, editing unready cut to something showing the opposite of that.
Every single channel will tell you that we actually need the Americans here to defend us from China. China, our biggest trading partner. A country that not only has zero interest in invading us, but they haven't invaded anyone for the past 50 years. Like, we're meant to...
I mean, like, okay, they haven't invaded anyone in 50 years, but they're like posturing to do it. And they aren't doing a lot of it with military force, but they are pushing aggressive lending policies on third world nations, basically giving them loans for infrastructure with ridiculous interest rates that they'll never pay back, ensuring they'll be in China's pocket. They're constantly pushing into the sovereign waters of the nations surrounding them and having Chinese fishermen pop over the border and steal the fish from everyone else, stuff like that. They're building artificial islands in the Pacific, so it's like, yeah, they haven't been doing a lot of military conquest lately in the last 50 years, but they're like prepping for it, and they've constantly been saber rattling with Taiwan this whole time, so yeah.
be scared of them, right? But meanwhile, the Americans invaded us a long time ago. Like, our country is littered with American soldiers, and if any of our politicians even question...
Cut to editing unready to check how many American soldiers are in Australia.
Okay, so depending on where you look, there are somewhere between 500 and 2,500 US troops in Australia. Wikipedia lists 500 American troops in Australia, whereas Al Jazeera lists 1,085 troops. Additionally, many news articles make notes of a Marine rotational force of 2,500, which was sent into Australia in 2021 during exercises. So basically, let's look at the high end of 2,500. How big is that? Well, to give you an idea, the Australian military has around 57,000 active personnel. So fuck all, basically. The US has more troops on Guam of all places than in Australia, as there are around 6,000 US troops on Guam. Guam, I know. In contrast, the biggest US troop deployment is in Japan, with around 55,000 US troops being present there. So yeah, this one in Australia is nothing at all, it's a drop in the bucket. So BoyBoy's claim of the whole country being overrun by American troops is once again incorrect. Additionally, there are only two American bases in the whole of Australia. Pine Gap and the aforementioned Harold E. Holt Naval Base, which isn't even fully controlled by the Americans. So that's 2 bases and 2,500 troops to occupy a nation of 25 million people across 7 million square kilometres. Real massive invasion force there, no idea how the Australians could possibly resist that. Okay, let's finish this. Back to me again.
They just get rid of him.
Ah, yes, because, you know, that one conspiracy theory where supposedly this guy was gotten rid of, and it's like, okay, Goff, I guess, but who else has been gotten rid of? What are you talking about? This is a pretty big claim. You need to have more evidence than just one half-baked conspiracy theory for this kind of shit.
And if any civilians happen to stumble upon the perimeter of a US base, literally walking through our own country...
Okay, I can't believe I have to explain this to you again. Like, you cannot go into an Australian military base and just start fucking waltzing around taking pictures, fucking waltzing Matilda like you bloody Aussies do. You can't do that. Why is this such a hard concept to understand? And it's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. If this was some farmer's land in the middle of the outback, you probably wouldn't be able to go on it either. Does that mean this is a huge violation of Australians and all this sort of shit? No, it doesn't. Of course not. Again, BoyBoy is just being hyperbolic and stupid for the sake of the video. Thank God it's almost over.
Our federal police will chase us down on behalf of a foreign occupying army. We're in America.
No, actually, on behalf of themselves, because they don't want you there either, because it's a joint base. Remember, you said as much earlier in the video.
Australia is by technically calling it a US-Australian joint defence facility. Joint defence facility. Joint defence facility.
Remember your own words, BoyBoy? I sure don't.
Right, we're just a giant US military base just floating in Asia.
Nope.
And if the Americans decide they want to go to war with China, then our beautiful island home is going to be on the front lines. No one ever...
I mean, if they go to war with China, it could be nuclear war, so technically just about everyone's homes will be on the front lines, but are you saying that if China and America went to war, you just want to sit it out? Like, you wouldn't have any preference for how that would go down? Really? Okay.
gave us a say in it.
Put you in the arms of an angel. Oh, holy shit. It's over. I can sleep.
Oh, thank God we are finally done. That one was painful to get through. I'm not sure what was worse, the constant lies and misinformation spread by BoyBoy, or his and his mates' stupidity at not understanding things like radio masks or what a through road is. Overall, on a purely factual basis, this is one of the worst YouTube videos I have ever seen. But it has over 2.7 million views at time of recording. 2.7 million! Holy shit! So I hope some of those people click on this video so that they can be properly informed as to the depth of the lies that BoyBoy pushes in this video. Let me know if you'd like to see me review any other BoyBoy videos, as he's got quite the catalogue of terrible crap to react to. I'm Unready, and thank you everyone for watching. I hope you got some entertainment out of my suffering this time. Make sure to like, share and subscribe, and I will see you next time.